So yeah, I think we are live. That's great. So welcome everyone. We're back again today for a Facebook Live and a great conversation with my friend Patti Carpenter. So welcome, Patti.
Hi, good afternoon here in New York, but hello to all from wherever you are. It's great to be with you, Lauren, and with ATA again.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you. So let me just introduce you for those of you who don't know. Patti is the principal of Carpenter and Company, or Trendscope, and she is an award-winning creative director in globally sourced home decor, personal accessories, and she's been working with Aid to Artisans for over 20 years. So we've been working with her a really long time, and she's a product designer. She's also a trend forecaster. And she's worked with a lot of different private label brands, including Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, Crate and Barrel, ABC Carpet and Home. The list goes on. So she has amazing experience, and we're just really thrilled to have you here, Patti, to answer some questions for people. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yes, do you realize when you were saying that, I was just counting. We're at 25 years I've been working with Aid to Artisans, so
Wow.
it has been a minute. Yes, it's crazy.
Yes.
I can believe it sometimes.
Yes, yes, wonderful. So as we're getting some people in, I see some people joining us live. So if you're here with us, please just type in the chat, say hello and where you are calling in from, and maybe your business. So let's get a list going of where in the world everyone is calling in from today. And let me start with our first little introduction of what we're doing. This is our series, part of our free event series that we have been doing through September and now into October. So we're just doing conversations with some of our amazing ATA mentors and industry experts to really give you a chance to connect and get some questions answered. And share some of the amazing experience that we have in our network. So we're welcome everyone to come. Patti Carpenter is also going to be one of our presenters at the eMarket Readiness Program that is coming up soon, October 19th to 22nd. And the registration for that is closing tomorrow. So we are right down to the line. So if you've been thinking about joining us, now is a great time to sort of get those questions answered if you have any, and Patti is here to share. So that's a little bit about what we're doing today. So Patti, let me start with what are some of the big trends that you've been seeing this year in the industry?
Yeah. Well, we track them for a few years out. So what's been most fascinating is watching the things that have deepened because of COVID, because we've been sort of insulated for the last 18 months, and those that have sort of fallen by the wayside, and those that have, really increased in importance. And certainly the most important is the idea of nature and the way that it sustains us. And so we are doing all kinds of things around that theme, whether it be the idea of the colors of the family and greens that have become so important. And they're all sort of, we call them elemental, herbal, grounding neutrals that can be played back against all kinds of color families. We're also talking about the great, the idea of bringing the outside in. And so we're seeing more of these outdoor spaces that people are transitioning into, where there's almost an endless kind of seamless flow from moving inside and outside of the home and space. We're seeing larger plants coming indoors. So this advent of big oversized planters, certainly we still have people who are doing, a windowsill in their kitchen for their herbal garden, or a windowsill, full of plants and flowers. But we really are starting to see this idea of trees coming back. And I was thinking about it the other day, and thinking in the 70s, everyone had like a ficus tree and a big rubber tree and all of these kinds of things. And now we're starting to see that kind of thing come back. I've just returned from Maison Objet in Paris. It was the first one that they had in the last 18 months. And it was really marvelous to be back in person. Wonderful to stand at the top of an aisle and really have take a look and see how things are emerging, trends are coming to the fore. And we had such a great turnout. We had up close to 50,000 people move through in 5 days, which was great after 18 months. We probably had close to 1,500 brands that were shown, and maybe just about 350 of them were new, which I always love discovery, this idea of what's new in the world. So it was really quite fascinating to be back with our design community again. I've also gone to High Point, North Carolina. I'm going again in a week. I'll be back down there again for the next show. I've been to Dallas market. So I really have been New York market. So I really have been gathering information from around the world. And those are some of those big things that we see. I also see a tie with the idea of nature, and it's something I'm writing about right now, the idea of human nature. So not just mother nature, but human nature. What are the things that we have had stirred up in us as we sat home or sort of pulled away from others and were rather insular in this time frame? And what did that call up for us? And those things that we're looking at that bring comfort and security and that sense of, of not being alone when you have been alone. Those kinds, trends that are feeding into those kinds of ideas and concepts are also really coming to the fore.
That's great. And we have some people who are saying hello. We've got 2 people from Bangladesh today, so welcome.
Oh, wow. Hi.
Carolina from Martha's Vineyard. So got
Hey.
some different continents happening. So welcome everyone. And I just want to remind you that we are going to have questions and answers coming from you. So please feel free to use the comment section to ask questions of Patti or of me as we go along. So this is an opportunity for you to get direct feedback from our amazing expert. So do use the chat as we go to ask questions. Okay, so let me ask you, you mentioned the first in-person trade shows again, and I'd love to hear, what were some of the things that you saw at those trade shows? How were they different from, before the pandemic? What do you think is going to continue on as we move into 2022?
Well, certainly I see that there's, we've stepped up the whole idea of safety, of well-being, of hygiene, of, that kind of thing. Protocols for cleanliness and things have certainly been stepped up. I think that we have all been, just hankering to get back together again. So there's certainly a wonderful air of conviviality and of exchange, and people just sort of reconnecting in a way that we hadn't been able to do in the last 18 months. I definitely believe that we will continue to see, certainly for the next year. I'm not sure if it'll go beyond, but certainly this hybrid, where this part of things that will happen online continue to be online, and parts of things that will happen in person, because we do still have people who are quite leery of coming back together, in larger groups and settings. And so I think that there's going to, continue to be this idea with, as an example, with something like Maison Objet. I'm their global trend ambassador. So I've been working with them for 7 years, about to go into my 8th. And we've started something a few years ago that's called Mom, which is the Maison Objet and More, which was their digital platform where you could go and look at items and vendors and brands who either were or were not participating in that particular edition of the show. That has grown tremendously. Certainly with the advent of being home, those of us who weren't big shoppers online have learned how to do that. And so there's going to be more of that. So that's why that component is going to continue to be very important when you talk about trade shows. But definitely, as human beings, certainly, and then as creatives, from my point of view, and certainly buyers, retailers, designers, we want to engage in product. We do, as humans, we have an emotional connection to the products that we're surrounding ourselves with or that we want to sell. And so that idea of not being in person is, that's not going to happen. We're definitely going to have some component that will be in person. You need that, to really understand the product, because of course, wood, on a screen, wood feels like glass, feels like, stone feels like fiber, because it's just this flat thing. And being able to engage that touch, again, something we've been craving for quite some time.
Yeah, certainly. And it is interesting to see, this hybrid happening. And I think that's still evolving. Certainly is like how that's going to play out. So I'd love to hear your opinion on, what is working? What are you seeing work in the online trade show space?
Well, what's interesting, we've all probably been zoomed out. In my early days, I remember writing an article and sort of saying that, the word moved from zooming past quickly something just being stationary in your chair, and so we've all gotten very accustomed to all of these different ways to interact online. And I think that there will be a continuation of that. People are getting involved with upping their digital game, doing 3D walkthroughs of their showrooms and things like that. And so that does help people to be more engaged and to be able to get a better sense of what the product is by being able to look at the thing holistically in a 360-degree way. I'll be talking on a panel about that in High Point. So I think that, the digital game has been upped, if you will, and that has really helped people to do better. But I do believe, I have seen some resistance because people really want to get back in person. And so I think creativity is going to be called on, here and now, so that people find creative ways to engage, new ways to engage, offering up experiences through that engagement that we may have been lacking. I think Shop Object, as a smaller trade show here in New York, did a wonderful job, sort of pre their in-person show and now post their in-person show, to really engage the consumer with talks and panels and different types of things. And they did them in segments so that you could really tune in. And that is something else I think you can do when you have the ability to connect online, is to create smaller groups, people with particular focuses, more niche kinds of events that really speak very specifically to a particular group of people. And I think that's something that's going to be taken more advantage of as we move forward.
Yeah, interesting. And we have another hello from Dixie. Oh, hi, Dixie. Nice to see you here, an alumni. So, can you maybe explain for those of us who are not as familiar with those trade shows, what is the difference between the different types of shows? I know we have some that are sort of, you can purchase things, and then some that are more networking.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the ones that I'm calling out are particularly focused on the trade. So that means, it's going to be the first look at the brands. It's the kinds of shows that the retailers go to, the interior designers go to, the product designers go to, people like me who are covering, what's new in the market are going to. And those are the larger sort of regional shows. So that would be something like the New York Now show here in New York, the Shop Object show, again, a smaller, more focused kind of show on a different type of product. Usually a younger, sometimes maker, designer who's right there you can speak to. And so that's the sort of thing that you might find there. When you move over to something like High Point, it's a huge marketplace that is not just a center, but really takes advantage of the entire town of High Point, North Carolina, which was the seat of where most of the furniture that was made in America came from for many, many, many years, and is still quite strong there. And so you really get a real influx of retailers, large and small, and designers of all kinds, interior product, textiles, that kind of thing. But you're really seeing just a plethora of product from all over the world, but mostly, more US based. And then you go to something like the Dallas Market Center, which is, more traditional in terms of buildings that have showroom after showroom after showroom. And in their case, they're doing a lot of new things. I'm not at liberty to talk about them yet, but a lot going on at the Dallas Market. So stay tuned. Lots of changes happening there as they shift and pivot, to post-COVID. You have the Vegas Market, which is more regional these days. So you get the buyers and retailers and designers from the West Coast who don't have to travel all the way across the country. You get Atlanta, similar, meaning that, it tends to be sort of the Southeast and East Coast, and maybe a little to the Midwest, So I do see shows getting more regional as people are a little more leery to travel. They're not zigging and zagging across the country. They're really focused more on the ones that are closer. That would be another thing that I see as an evolution from this COVID and the pandemic. So it really is about what you're looking for. Then there are those smaller craft fairs, that you can go to where you're really just looking specifically for craft. But then there's shows like New York Now that have areas dedicated to craft, So I think that that's important. We certainly see a rise in people wanting that handmade item in their space, that idea of connectedness to other human beings, that feeling of someone has touched this, and now, their story continues through my having that product. And there's a connection. I think that, that connection is certainly big. We've been talking about those C's: connectedness, comfort, and community, are some of the big things that are coming out of this. And so that's one of those ways. So looking at those smaller shows, again, niche shows like the museum shows or the jewelry shows that happen all across. So you can certainly, find in your areas many types of things that you could support. Coming up this weekend, as an example, upstate New York in Kingston, New York, is the Field and Supply. And that's been going on for several years, but that's now the type of show where buyers will go and look for small new maker kinds of, items, innovators. And so there's those kinds of things going on all across the country, and that those really are sort of how you can differentiate what you're finding at them.
So do you have any tips for, if you're an international brand of artisans and you're thinking about, entering the US market, any tips or recommendations on how to sort of sift through all these and decide what to sort of invest in?
Right.
Do you go online? Do you go in person? I mean, sometimes it's not possible with travel restrictions.
Yes, exactly. We've run into this with ATA, hence our eMRP, the idea that people aren't as free to travel right now. One of the things that we're certainly talking about as we do our training is that sense of understanding how to navigate on the internet and understanding your sort of the specific space as an artisan group or a person where you stand. So what's your capability? What's your capacity? What's your level of quality for your product? Understanding, where your raw materials are coming from, and is that a consistent source? Or do you have, because of seasonal types of things where you sit, will you have breaks in how you can, how and when and where you can produce? Really understanding your story, and then being able to tell your story in a very authentic way, very targeted and focused to the group of people who are most likely to be your clients. And you can find that out by doing your research. Everybody kind of, lots of people feel like they want to sell the US because we're such a big, market and place that they see that there is opportunity. But again, everybody's trying to do it. And you're not trying to sell the whole US. You're trying to sell your niche, focused, targeted, consumer. So you need to do some research about who that is, where they buy, what they're looking for, what their value systems are, because you want to be able to connect in, again, that whole idea of dovetailing with what you do, with who you're trying to approach, and then taking that information and really, honing in, and that way making a more focused and targeted approach as opposed to that spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks approach.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that just being, really careful about your niche, and also just really understanding your consumer. When we were talking yesterday in the webinar, we talked a lot about really getting to know your ideal client and identifying what's important to them so that you can communicate in a way that they understand and makes you more connected.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things that we are hearing is that as we emerge, hopefully we're emerging and not going to go through another round of this from this, isolation and being the pandemic itself, that those stories are more and more important. And especially if you're talking to a younger consumer, and who most people are trying to engage because you want to get them and sort of go on the journey with them, that value system is very, very important. They are very tuned in, and you don't want just some random story, because of course with the internet, people can check, people can, do research, and you want to be telling them who you are and what you do and why you do it and who you do it with, and what you do it with in terms of your raw materials and all those things, because those are various points of connecting, being able to connect in. And when you find those ones that really, are those touch points, you have several points, several places at which you have those touch points, that's your ideal consumer. That's who you want to be looking at. That's who you want to be targeting. And that whole idea of them being focused themselves, we're finding that they're not so brand loyal in the same way as they used to be to those big name brands. They're looking for the smaller brands. They're looking for the ones that are new and different and really speak to their emotion and their heart and their belief systems. So this, I think, is in that respect a very ideal time to be a smaller producer.
Yeah, it's true. So we have a couple more people coming in. Debbie from Thailand. Welcome, Debbie. Nice to see you here. And David from Northern British Columbia, Canada.
Wow.
That's great. He's distributing high quality crafts from Guatemala.
Wow. One of my favorite places. I've spent 21 years working in Guatemala. So yay, David.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. So I want to remind all of you and our new listeners that you can ask questions of Patti or me. And so feel free to type those in the comments as we go along.
I have a question. What kinds of things is David doing in Guatemala? And has he had some trouble given the fact that, you know, they've been hit pretty hard in Guat lately?
We'll give him a minute to answer.
Yeah. We can keep chatting if you like.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
So you mentioned earlier sort of that comfort and security being one of the trends. And I'd love to see, you know, what are some of the products that you can see opportunity in related to, you know, both bringing indoors or outdoors inside, as well as that comfort and security.
Well, there's you know, the beauty of macro trends like that is that they have lots of different ways that you can sort of tap into them. So one of the things I'll say as a material, as an example, is we're seeing a rise in fiber, and people are doing wonderful things with all kinds of grasses and fibers, palms, caning. You know, it started with the idea of going back to handmade craftsmanship with caning. One of the other trends that we're seeing with regard to this is that people are looking more for master craftsmanship, higher end pieces that really speak to the skill set and the talent and the expertise of the maker, not so much that loving DIY, loving hands at home look where it's kind of rustic and maybe unfinished in that way. They really are looking for people who know how to work with whatever the material is and work with it well. And if they leave a raw edge, it's by design. It's not because they're not really good at tying it off, whatever that might be. We're certainly seeing a continuation of recycled and upcycled things in wood, but think of them in round and curvilinear forms that feel good, you know, in your hand when you touch them. That sense of comfort comes from that. We see curvilinear forms in furniture, things that I've been calling it's a wrap, and gives you sort of, they're coming further and further around to kind of give you a hug when you sit. We're seeing a lot of outdoor furniture styling that has been moved indoors and vice versa. So the outside rooms are getting a little more formal where they used to be very casual, and the inside rooms are starting to bring in materials that used to be outside to kind of mesh and meld those two areas together. So that might be something you can consider. We're seeing a lot more natural materials being used for storage as people had to come home and work from home. They didn't want their, you know, the idea of something looking so much like an office when they were done with their Zooms at the end of the day. Yeah. So things that had a function, you know, sort of form and function working together, but storage where they could put something away and pull it out the next day, or collapse something, or do, you know, or something that looked beautiful when it was sitting out and looked like part of their decor. It wasn't so particularly focused on looking like something from an office. Those kinds of things are very important. So if you can work in storage, that's important. We're seeing certainly a great deal of things with print and pattern that's evocative of the outdoor. So leaf prints and palm fronds and florals, those kinds of prints are very important right now. And we see them with a touch of whimsy. So not necessarily looking exactly like you find them in nature, but with the idea of the innovator or the creator touching them with their own sense of fantasy to give us something that's a little bit larger than life. And we see two sides to the florals as an example, those big oversized blooms, you know, that are really very fantastic, or the tiny little ditzy ones that are coming out of that cottage core, you know, sort of feeling like meadow kinds of flowers, smaller in scale. And we see lots of the stems and the leaves where it used to just be the buds and the heads of florals. We're now seeing it look much more botanical with the stems and the leaves and in those you know, impressions as well. So that would be another way that you could bring the outdoors in and touch on that comfort level with nature.
Love it. We have a question from Dixie. She's asked, what is the key trend in apparel or textiles? And is loungewear still on the rise?
Oh, yes. I was just at a party the night before last with the editor. El Decor did a whole party because they are their current edition in October is all about sustainability. And so they have they really focused on new materials, recycled, upcycled, new ways of making materials, biophilic materials that are grown versus made. So there's all kinds of things that are coming out of that. Paint from Sherwin-Williams that is healthy in your home. So all those kinds of things are happening. And so as we talk about home textiles, we definitely see the ability certainly to clean them. So there's a rise in that whole idea of, good hygiene, safety, protected in that way. We also see a lot of texture because people want to engage. We've been so removed at that idea of these wonderful slubby, raw, natural materials are really important in both fashion and home. We also are seeing color stories, again, evocative of nature. So a range of greens, a range of beiges and taupes and mushroom tones, browns, replacing grays, continue to be important as the neutral that can play very nicely. The nice thing about the warm side of the neutral palette is it plays beautifully against pastels, against midtones, against brights, and against darks. So you can play that against everything. We see a lot of pleating and things that can expand as we might have expanded a bit while we were at home just noshing and snacking.
Yeah.
We're seeing cozy fabrics, slubby, nubby, warm brushed textures that make you feel, again, kind of enveloped and well. We certainly see the idea of well-being. So things that are making us feel better. And that could be a material that's infused. I'm seeing these new materials that are infused with kinds of things that make you feel better, but certainly lounge, the idea of something that's simple and clean and easy to put on, that can be layered, that can maybe be dressed up or dressed down. Those are definitely on the rise.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have another question coming in. Will Americans ever move on from neutrals?
We absolutely are. There's a lot of color out there, and we've been referring to it as hopeful and optimistic. We want some color in our lives. I was being out with people finally again. I have friends that wore navy blue and black all the time, and they show up in a hot pink shirt, and I'm like, oh my God, who are you? But it's that idea of it lifts the spirits. Color, we definitely have as humans an emotional response to color. So there will definitely be color, and we have there's sort of pockets of color that are really important. For me, one of the biggest ranges is certainly the ones that are the colors of earth tones and natural dyes, because we're seeing such a breadth of the palette in natural dyes expanding. We used to be kind of narrow, and a lot more artisans that I've been working with are going back to the notebooks and the recipes from their great grandparents, and where they could get brighter, more intense colors. And so we're seeing that even come through in a natural way, and that's important. We certainly are going to continue to see the indigos and the inky blues, but they're moving into the chambrays, the lighter blues. If you think about your favorite, pair of denim jeans, that level of blue is really important. Also, that represents sort of big sky thinking, bright blue skies ahead, all of that kind of thing. Surprisingly, I've been seeing a lot of white, which I was surprised by, because when you're laying at home on your sofa all day, I was very surprised that I was seeing sort of white spaces. But of course, there's so many fabrics now that were the outdoor fabrics that now people are doing indoors, so that they're protected. But that idea of a neutral sort of canvas, if you will, that you can then pop those brighter accent colors on, but they don't have to be the big piece in your home. I have always had a neutral sofa my entire life as an adult. And during COVID, I got this russet sofa. I wanted some color in my life. So I'm not alone. That is the kind of thing that we are absolutely seeing across the board. So yes, there will definitely be color.
I love it. Carolina says, I work with artisans in Morocco, and most things are very colorful.
Yes, they do. They do beautiful products in color.
Yes. And David has just said, I returned from Guatemala just before the outbreak of the pandemic 18 months ago. It was years ago that through my daughter that I met an artisan craftsman on the streets of Jaquel.
On a Hachel. Mm-hmm.
And then as a survivor of childhood polio, selling his high quality work, producing original journals with upcycled materials and wildflower florals.
Oh, he's got all the trends right there.
Mm-hmm. And with the pandemic, his local sales have disappeared. I'm a bit overwhelmed about selling online, but I have committed to working with him on a no profit for me basis. I am listening as you speak. I wish I could record this and send it to Fernando. It's so insightful.
Well, no, you've got some great things. I mean, that story alone would be a fabulous story, you know, to share, not to take advantage, if you will. You know, I want to be clear about that. You're not taking advantage of his story, but it's a kind of story that resonates with people. You know, the idea that he's making something by hand, it's recycled, it's upcycled, it's got florals in it. You know, these are all things that speak to well-being. And right now, those are very important things that people are looking for. And journaling, I don't know the data off the top of my head, but I know I've been in many panels where we've talked about it. Those kinds of things, journaling and meditation, and oh my God, smudging. You know, this is the kind of thing that a tiny little small group of people used to do, and now almost every line that does any kind of fragrance has a smudge stick. As I walk through Maison, I couldn't believe how many. When I walk in small stores all around the world, across the country, they all have these things. So any of these kinds of things where we're really talking about taking care of ourselves and really being in touch with our inner selves, those, you know, this is the perfect time for a journal.
Yeah.
There's so many places I believe you could sell that. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And I should also mention that you can send this video to Fernando, because we are uploading them all to our YouTube channel. So we've already got 3 conversations, which were also fabulous, uploaded there. And so you can just go to youtube.com/aid to artisans, and we will be putting this up probably tomorrow. So feel free to share it.
Oh, wonderful.
For later.
And I just want to tell everybody, because I can see my light, I'm sitting next to a very big window. So even though I have 2 lights on me, the sun is moving as the clouds move. But so that's why I'm sort of going in and out of light. But I noticed it myself, and I didn't want people to go, what's going on with her? So
yes,
it's nature outside my window.
Yes, don't worry. So I wanted to just mention that, you know, Patti is going to be talking a lot more about color trends and what's coming for 2022 in the eMarket Readiness Program. If you're looking for more and you want to sort of have a chance to chat with Patti during the eMarket Readiness Program, that is happening October 19th to 22nd, and we'd love to have you. Registrations are closing tomorrow, so the window is ending at 5 o'clock tomorrow. So we'd love to have you join, and there's a link in this description if you'd like to learn more about the eMRP. But really, it's a program that is designed to give you all the tools that you need to grow into that global market. So trends,
I highly recommend it. It's a marvelous group of, you know, the team is marvelous. You're going to get so much information from so many experts in so many different fields that all impact your business, and you'll learn so much. I highly recommend attending if you can.
Yes, wonderful. So Patti, what are you going to be talking about at the eMRP? Give us a little window into what's coming.
Well, what we'll be talking about is color trends, color and palette. So the way that we approach things is we talk about why there is a need for understanding trends when you have a business, and how continuing to stay on top of things so that your product continues to be fresh and you continue to be able to have new things to communicate with your buyers about is very important. How it helps to regenerate whatever your product mix is, etc. So we'll be talking about colors and palettes of color. We'll do a short thing on fads and versus trends, because that's always a big question. We'll talk a little bit about sort of the foundational understanding of color as well. So yeah, there'll be a lot of information about that, and it's all hot off the presses.
Yes. Patti's just come back from all of the in-person shows. I don't know many people who've managed to do them all. So you have unique insights that a lot of us do not. So we're very excited about it. Okay, so last chance for questions for Patti. We've got a couple comments. Dixie says, great, thank you, Patti. David says, brilliant. I'm so pleased that color is reemerging, and I will tell Fernando, earth tones are wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Carolina says, love your office. Well,
Oh,
thank you.
thank you, thank you. Yes, I collect masks. So you're seeing all the masks from all over the world back there, and then baskets. I'm a
Yeah.
collector, so there's all kinds of groups of things around the space.
Yes. Well, any parting words of wisdom for the people who are here listening or who might watch this in the future? Any tips or suggestions you might want to leave people with?
Well, I think overall, the idea that certainly we've all been through something together, you know, that's the thing that is most important. I think that we've all over the world experienced this with, you know, together, something that has not happened, you know, before in the world, and certainly not at a time where we were so connected and could be right on top of understanding that it was happening all over the world together. And so this idea that we're going to emerge, you know, everyone keeps talking about the new normal. I don't know that I believe that there's going to be a quote unquote new normal. I think we're going to, each of us sort of interweave some of the things that we've had to endure and deal with, and ways that we've shifted our lives in this last 18 months. But certainly we are going to go back to the way that certain other things were done prior to this, when we could be out and about in the world. And I think that holding on to our humanity, holding on to our optimism, and holding on to that idea that we are in fact a community, we are connected, and we do bring each other comfort through our connections and our products that we work, you know, that we exchange with each other, no matter how that's done. Those are the kinds of touchstone things that I think are going to keep us grounded. And so, you know, the whole idea is, I think things will get better. They, you know, the change is not always bad. Change can be very good. And I think it's allowed us to deepen. You know, we've been forced to kind of slow down in the beginning, and now many of us have ramped up to be even faster than we were before.
Yes.
So finding that balance is also key. But yeah, really focusing on who you are, taking this time to understand what your business is and who you are as a business and a brand, and who your customer is as you know, is really going to help you, I think, to move forward in the future.
Wonderful. Those are wonderful parting words of wisdom. Thank you, Patti. And thank all of you for joining us. It was great to have a conversation with all of you, and we will be uploading this to YouTube so that you can rewatch or share with friends who might be interested in the topics. And again, eMRP registration is closing tomorrow, and we have an alumni in here who's saying, I recommend to anyone listening and working with an artisan businesses to attend the eMRP, and it's lots of valuable information. Thank you, Dixie.
Great, 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 great.
That's great. So yeah, again, we would love to see you at the eMRP. Please feel free to reach out to our office if you have any questions about if this is a good fit for you. And you have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes. So hopefully we'll see some of you there.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yes.
All
so
right.
thank you, Patti. We'll sign off there. It was great to have everyone. Thank you.
Yes.